Hello, everyone. I'm Tori, and thank you so much for joining our Q&A session today, in which experts from DSM Technology and Zadara will cover topics like data assurance, ransomware, backups, infrastructure, and more. With that, I'd like to introduce our speakers today, Frankie Majewicz, who is the VP of Technology at DSM, and Noam Shandar, who is VP of Worldwide Solution Architecture at Zadara. We'll get going with our questions in just a moment. But Noam, can you take a moment to introduce Zadara? And then Frankie, if you'll do the same for DSM.
Happy to do that. Thank you, Tori. Zadara is the world's largest edge cloud and provides a full infrastructure as a service stack at more than 400 locations around the world. A few things that set Zadara apart is that the stack is fully featured. It's a full enterprise-grade solution on both compute and storage. It's fully elastic, going up and down, turning things on and off as needed and adjusting spend accordingly. It is fully managed by Zadara to ensure availability, uptime, performance, and so on and so forth. And everything that we do, we've been around for 11 years, has been designed from the ground up to do exactly this, as a service at hundreds of locations around the world.
Hi, everyone. I'm Frankie Majewicz at DSM. DSM is a regional cloud computing company and a managed services provider company where we try to help our clients kind of guide them to the best technology decisions that they can make.
Great. Thank you guys for those introductions. So we're going to jump into the questions. So we're going to start off with just what are some of the biggest data assurance concerns that your customers have today?
Yeah, Tori. Some of the biggest concerns our clients have today around data assurance is knowing that their data is going to be there when they need it most. And so today it's staying ahead of those always evolving threat landscape. Every day there's a new threat coming out. And so really being prepared for those. And also, our customers really want to have that peace of mind, knowing that their data can survive and be available no matter what the threats are that are out there.
Absolutely. And to add one more thought to that, the important to know that that data that needs to survive is usable. So the two key rules are make sure the data survives and make sure that's the right data, because the wrong time to find out that the data is incomplete, let's say, is at the time that you need it.
Absolutely. So that leads into when looking at a backup solution, what are some of the most overlooked ways to get the most out of your solution?
Yeah, and here's kind of where Veeam has this kind of backup rule that's out there. It's called the 3-2-1-1-0 rule. It's having 3 copies of your data on 2 different types of media. One of those is being offline, and one of those is being kind of air gapped. And so what that does is, kind of allows for you to have data assurance, knowing that you follow that rule and you'll have your data when you need it. And kind of some overlooked ways that you can leverage your backup data and getting more out of your backup data is leveraging it to do testing, reporting, and security scans on your backup data. And by doing these processes on your backup data, you can limit the performance impacts to your production environment.
Exactly. And that's the 0. So the 0 is just a very, very important addition to the 3-2-1-1-0 is 0 errors, 0 defects in the data. Following those 5 rules of 3-2-1-1 and 0 gives one that peace of mind that you, Frankie, were just talking about in terms of knowing that if needed, the data is there no matter what, and that it will successfully restore if necessary.
Those are great points. So are there ways to guarantee business continuity in times of a disaster or, say, a cyber attack?
Yeah, Tori. One way is to leverage a service provider that is out of band of your infrastructure. This kind of provides a separate control plane, a separate security boundary to kind of ensure that your data is safe. You can utilize technologies like immutability and air-gapped backup solutions. With immutability, your data is fixed, it can't be changed or deleted. And then in an air-gapped scenario, a backup copy is created that can't be reached from an external connection like the internet.
Yeah, and if you think about the 32110 rule, one of the rules was about two sites. So if there are two different sites, then it's better if those sites are distant from each other. And this is where a solution provider like DSM that has a partnership with us is able to offer the service across those hundreds of locations. It's very easy to find two locations that are suitable geographically, uh, close enough to you, but yet far enough from each other that you're able to guarantee that a disaster or some other event that affects one site has no chance of affecting the other site.
So that touched or danced around the outside of, disasters or cyber attacks, but how has the conversation around ransomware changed over the last year with your customers?
Yeah, Tori, the conversation definitely has changed in the last year. It's ransomware is becoming more common. It's really getting real with our customers. Now, unfortunately, our customers know of another business that's been affected by ransomware. And so it's kind of shifted their mindset of not if it's going to happen to me, but kind of when is it going to happen to me? And what do we have to do to be ready for when that does happen, and what things can be put in place to ensure that you can recover from a ransomware attack.
And that's why the air gapping is so important. So at the end of the day, the one way to guarantee that a certain copy of your data can't be affected is if it is offline. If it's offline, it cannot be reached by an attacker.
Awesome. So switching a little bit, so want to ask about multi-tenant infrastructure. So how can a multi-tenant infrastructure or environment impact performance-sensitive applications, and what could organizations do to combat this?
Yeah, Tori. So typically in a multi-tenant infrastructure, you have a pool of resources that kind of get divvied up and allocated to the customers. And so occasionally, one of those customers could take maybe more resources out of that pool than really designed to do, and that could potentially impact their other applications needs. And I know Zadara has some interesting ways that they kind of combat that. And Noam, do you want to kind of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely, Frankie. The common wisdom before we designed our architecture was that noisy neighbors were inevitable, and if one wants to enjoy the cost benefits of multi-tenancy, they have to suffer the problem of noisy neighbors. But that's not actually true. You don't have to trade one off for the other. With our patented architecture, which we call VPSA, Virtual Private Storage Array, we provide via DSM the cost basis of a multi-tenant solution, but with a single tenant experience, let's call it. There are no shared resources, even though they're available on demand, even though it's elastic, and each tenant has full control of their own experience and performance and other trade-offs, completely independent of all the choices made by other tenants, which means it's the best of all worlds, and there is no compromise to be made here.
Absolutely. So in today's technology landscape, as a service is becoming more and more prevalent. Can you guys talk a little bit about what the benefits are of the as a service model and how that helps maximize profits?
Yeah, Tori. A lot of it comes down to as a service is speed to value. You can kind of turn on and start consuming services right away. You don't need to wait on a procurement cycle to get equipment in, and just as easy as it is to turn it on, it's that easy to turn it off, and you can adjust your consumption and spend based off your business needs.
And what that changes fundamentally is the relationship between the user and the service provider. Traditionally, IT has been a customer-vendor relationship. The vendor sold some hardware to the customer or a software license, and the customer was stuck with that, whether they needed it or not, or whether it was the right thing to have bought or not. This creates a partnership because the offering is elastic. It can be dialed up and dialed down or even stopped based on the needs of the user. And that means that the service provider's interest is in making the user successful. So now they're on the same side. They're not in opposition. And I think that makes this this world a better place, because we're all working toward the same goal, which is growing the end user. So everybody here in this chain, from DSM's customer to DSM to Zadara, are trying to do the same thing.
I agree. It's so important to have technology partners that you can trust and have the best interest of the clients in place. So, switching gears to talk about a little bit about Microsoft. So, what are some of the challenges that businesses are facing when backing up to Microsoft 365, and how can DSM and Zadara help them solve those?
Yeah, Tori. What a lot of people don't know is that Microsoft has what's called a shared responsibility model, where the client is actually responsible for the data that resides in Microsoft 365. Microsoft's responsible for, say, the underlying infrastructure, but at the end of the day, it's your data and you're responsible for it. And that's where DSM and Zadara can help back up that Microsoft 365 data and make sure that it's available when you need it most.
Yeah, I think that says it all, Frankie.
Great. So, moving on to the SLED space, what unique considerations do SLED organizations face when it comes to business continuity?
Yeah, Tori. A lot of SLED organizations are who people depend on the most when a disaster happens. And so those SLED organizations need to have their infrastructure up and running even through a disaster. And if they get impacted by a disaster, to be up and running as quickly as possible to serve all the people that depend on those organizations.
And I would add that SLED organizations have unique budgeting requirements. They generally don't have a large pool of CapEx funds sitting around waiting to be spent. So they are much more likely to be able to afford new projects using an OpEx model, where it's pay as you go. And then the other is that they are dependent on a state budget or a county or city budget, and those budgets can disappear in the budgetary cycle. They may not get renewed or reapproved. And in which cases, again, that as a service model that allows one to turn down services as needed is perfect for ensuring that they're not stuck with something that they can't afford.
That's a great point. So, what are some of the best practices, Frankie, that DSM relies on to guarantee customers' data is safe and available when needed?
Yeah, one of the first things is obviously, making sure our customers' data is backed up. And then we talked about some of the best practices that we implement here at DSM, leveraging immutability, again, ensuring that customers' data can't be modified or changed, leveraging offsite copies, air gapped, so they're never able to get accessed from a third party. We leverage multi-factor authentication to give that extra level of verification of who's getting into DSM systems and proving who they are. And again, it comes really down to that 3-2-1-1-0 rule. We can't stress that enough. Just kind of following those best practices to ensure that their data is available when they need it.
And I'll add, in a somewhat self-serving manner, that wisely DSM chose Zadara for the storage behind the 3-2-1-1-0, and the reason is straightforward. We're the only storage provider out there that has a single solution that covers all of these rules, every aspect of the 3-2-1-1-0, be it the different media, the different locations, the immutability or offline aspect, are all covered by this single solution. That makes everybody's life much easier and simpler, because it doesn't require multiple vendors, it doesn't require coordination, doesn't require multiple configuration.
Those are all really good points, and it really sounds like DSM and Zadara just want to make sure that their clients' data is secure and safe. So that's really important. So how are DSM and Zadara differentiated versus buying directly from a hyperscale or cloud provider? So what are the benefits to users?
Yeah, Tori, one of our main benefits is DSM can kind of walk you through some of your IT challenges and really have those conversations to understand what your needs are and your challenges, and come up with some unique solutions to meet your business requirements. And also just in general, having a regional presence, we kind of have a latency advantage on the networking side as compared to the hyperscalers.
Exactly. Yeah, we call that the rain shadows, where the clouds don't exist, it can't rain. And DSM does a great job of filling those rain shadows. I would add one more little point, which is, we've really enjoyed working with DSM because they're very easy to work with and very professional. That's a huge advantage versus the hyperscalers. You, as a DSM customer, get a level of service that that is not available from the hyperscalers because they're kind of dealing with a mass audience, and that personal touch makes a huge, huge difference.
Absolutely, it does. So the last question I'm going to ask you guys today are, what are good everyday data protection practices that our listeners should be aware of?
Yeah, thanks, Tori. Definitely, it really starts at you got to test your backups. You have to know that when you need them, they're going to work, and that you have those processes down. And then also today, organizations and companies are moving really fast and deploying new applications. And so they always need to be assessing what their critical data is and ensuring that those are being backed up and can be recovered in the event that they need it.
In the context of backup, Frankie, I think it's useful to talk about the availability of snapshots as an adjunct to backups. So, I wouldn't recommend doing one or the other. I would recommend doing both. And the way to think about it is a snapshot is instant to create and instant to restore from, but it sits within the same storage instance that is storing the main data. So it doesn't provide the kind of redundancy that a backup would. And the way to think about how that is useful is because snapshots are instant, they're very convenient. So if there's a need to do a restore, the first thought should be, hey, can I get it back from a snapshot? And if the answer is yes, you're done. Seconds later, whatever it is that's gone is back. And then if not, then you go to a backup and you get it that way. You're guaranteed to get it back since you follow the 3-2-1-1-0 rule. And it's a question of how quickly can you get it back.
Exactly. It's definitely taking a layered approach to ensure that if one of the layers does break down, you have another layer to fall back on.
Well, thank you both. That was all really good information. I hope that our listeners found some value in that. So Frankie and Noam, I thank you for being here and thank everyone for listening and hope you have a great day. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.